What is going on, guys? I hope you're having a wonderful day, and it's time for some more Berserk content here on the Real Life Ryan channel. Shout out to my Patreon supporter, Yusef. He actually requested this video, and he wanted to know what my top 10 deaths in Berserk are. And for a series like Berserk that has no shortage in character deaths, this was kind of a hard list to put together. However, there are particular ones that kind of stand out way more than the others. So thank you, my brother Yusef. Thank you for the support, the donation, and the suggestion on this video. The only thing difficult about making this list was trying to figure out in which direction I wanted to take it, because he didn't give any specifics. So I kind of just took it upon myself to rank this in the way of what deaths gave me the most visceral reaction when I was reading the manga. So what did I get the most reaction out of? Did I audibly gasp? Did I, sit there in shock? Did I stare at the page for a couple of seconds longer than I normally would? And this way it can kind of be a mix of more sympathetic deaths and cathartic deaths and everything that's in between. This is also including humans and apostles and everybody else, anything that happens within the Berserk manga as far as the death count goes. And I am going to give some honorable mentions. One I'm going to give to the Skull Knight, which I guess technically would be King Geyserich. Since we don't actually see his death in the manga, I felt it wasn't fair to count it, but it is said that his death was because of the Berserker armor and his rage finally took over and he eventually bled out from just fighting at his most maximum potential until he eventually collapsed. And we are assuming that this happened during his eclipse that we saw some flashbacks of. But since we still don't really have confirmation of the exact layout of his death, I thought it wasn't fair to actually put him on the list, so I'm not counting him here. The other honorable mention goes to all 100 brave Tudor soldiers that tried to fight Guts in the woods, commanded by Korbowitz, and all met their ends at the hand of the 100-man slayer, Guts. And this is before any of his power-ups. But then again, I guess Guts always does have the power of rage on his side.
Don't fuck with me! I have the power of God and anime on my side!
Wait, Also, shout out to this apostle that was in mid-sentence and then Skull Knight cut his face in half. I don't know, this always just made me laugh. Anyway, here we go, the top 10 deaths in Berserk as far as giving me a reaction when I read the manga. At number 10 is the Snake Baron, which is kind of the first major antagonist that we see in Berserk in the very first chapter. And his death is kind of more in the cathartic side, where he was sort of just this big evil villain, just somebody to kind of introduce us to the world of Berserk, to what apostles are, what they do, how evil they are, and everything. But the thing that stands out about this death is Guts's method upon killing the Snake Baron, as he doesn't just kill him, he pelts him with arrows and actively wants him to suffer. So I think this death is really important as to showing us who our protagonist is at this point, where Guts's mindset is, and how Guts is kind of just as vicious as the monsters that he's hunting in a particular way. He's not looking for a clean, swift death. He's looking to actually make them suffer for some reason that we don't know yet as far as the first chapter goes. He wants them to feel the pain, despair, and helplessness that humans would feel at the wake of apostles, so sort of a payback in a way. And you could say, yeah, maybe it's a little bit overboard, but then again, these are demonic creatures that are literally eating children, so, take it with a grain of salt. But like I said, it does show us sort of the mindset of our main character at the time, and it's a good introduction to Guts as a character, and a good introduction to Berserk as a series, as in, if we're not prepared to handle this, then you should probably just stop reading now. My number 9 death is going to be the Midland King, and he never really gets an actual name in the manga, we just know him as the King, and this guy just got progressively creepier as the manga goes on. Honestly, one of the most disturbing moments in the manga for me, because one, I saw the anime version first, so I did not see this coming whatsoever. But yeah, the Midland King kept his daughter single because he was hoping someday she would come to him. See, his actual wife had passed on, and his daughter looked like her to the point where the king was actually sexually attracted to his daughter and jealous of being cucked by Griffith, who was the one that actually took his daughter's virginity. And it's this whole big, weird, creepy incest thing and this power trip that he has, and the fact that he actually does go in and try to assault his daughter in some way. She does get to kick him in the face, which is nice. But the more we find out about the king, just the creepier and more disgusting he is. And all the better that when we flash forward 2 years later, It looks like he might have some of the plague that's going on. I don't know if it's really confirmed, but he sees this vision of the White Hawk coming down in front of him, sort of how everyone had that connected dream to kind of prelude Griffith's arrival into the world. And he sees the hawk actually kind of wrap its wing rather, around Charlotte. And so, like, even in his last moments, he's basically watching another man take his daughter away from him, and he dies in, like, absolute agony and misfortune. And he's a man that felt the burden of the throne, the burden of being a king, whereas to somebody like Griffith, it just comes so naturally. It's what he's always wanted, always desired, not something he was born into. And so, like, even in his last moments, he looks to Griffith as, oh, you're here to liberate me. The guy that kind of came in and was just, like, so true to himself and something that the king could never be, something that, you know, admitted things to the king that he could never admit to himself and everything. And so, in his last moments, he just shows his weakness and basically gives up his throne, saying, here, someone better is coming to take my place. And it's just, like, it's such a satisfying death, and the fact that, you know, he was such a creep, and then also you feel how pathetic he was at the very end, and it's not a very honorable death. At my number 8, I'm gonna go with Corcus, and yes, a lot of the Band of the Hawk is gonna be on this list. Corcus, I even debated putting at number 1, and I'm gonna tell you why. Is because, look, there's a lot of Berserk fans out there, and we all want to think that we're badass like Guts, right? We all want to think that we either have a dream like Griffith that we're striving for, or that we're just going to kind of do our own thing and live by the sword like Guts. But I think deep down, a lot of you guys know we're probably a lot more like Corcus. We've worked really hard, and then when we finally get a reward, we want to be able to enjoy it, right? We want to be able to sit back and kind of mingle in the taverns and get the maidens and everything, and kind of feel the spoils of our riches, right? Well, when all that was ripped away from Corcus and the rest of the Band of the Hawk, and they find themselves in a strange, weird, astral hell dimension realm, and Corcus is about to die, he finds a beautiful woman in front of him, naked and ready for him. And Corcus knows that this is not a real woman, and that this is a demon of some sort, that he's about to die. He knows this, alright? I truly believe 100% Corcus knows this. But he goes right up to the woman anyways, and he just buries his face in her tits, knowing that he's gonna die. But if he is gonna die, why not die with your face in some tits? And out of all the Band of the Hawk members, I think the way that Corcus went is probably the way we would all choose to go if we had the choice. My number 7 pick is going to be Gaston. And Gaston's death was really disturbing to me. I mean, everything about the eclipse is disturbing, but with Gaston in particular, I think it was because we never really got a lot of Gaston, but every time that we got him in the story, he was always a very, like, cheery, chipper guy. He was always kind of upbeat, he had a good personality, he really appreciated Guts, made himself known as a supporter and somebody that you'd want to have by your side. And he never really did anything negative that we saw. You know, every time we saw Gaston, he was in a positive light. And so seeing him there, you know, without an arm and dripping of blood and everything, and telling his last moments to Guts that he, you know, feels like we're trapped in some kind of weird, bizarre, twisted story or something like that, and that he feels like a side character, which is like kind of like borderline breaking the fourth wall here, a little bit meta in a way. And you could have just seen Gaston die in Guts' arms like that, you know, really sad, says his last words, whatever. But no, Gaston's fucking face has to goddamn explode with some sort of demon that's inside of him this entire time, his eyeball going in one direction and Guts holding him in his arms while his face explodes. That is so obnoxiously cruel to this character. Yeah, and I was shocked. I was like, oh my god, out of all the Band of the Hawk characters, I mean, Gaston's one of the ones that did not deserve the, like, I mean, yeah, it was something else. At my number 6 pick, I'm going to go with Rosine, and this is going to fall into the more kind of somber, sad category. With Rosine, I always thought it was an interesting character study of what Miura was portraying within these Lost Children chapters, whereas we know Rosine is a monster, we know that she's actively killing people, turning people into her bug slaves, turning people into her little, like, twisted version of elves and everything that's happening here. And then we also see Guts kind of delving, this is right before, you know, while his Beast of Darkness is being born, we're seeing him sort of metaphorically turn into a monster and doing a bunch of horrible things in order to kill this one apostle. So it's slowly showing sympathetic scenes for Rosine because she was a child, and unlike a lot of the other apostles, she's coming at this from a child's perspective of how she came from an abusive household and how she wanted to live in this fantasy world that she'd always heard about, the Misty Valley with the elves. She wanted to be an elf and everything. So everything about her is coming from a child's perspective, and Guts is here as this, grown adult man that's basically kind of giving her a violent coming of age story within this. But I really like how the story presents this portion of itself, because it does show how, in becoming an apostle, how you can become so lost in despair and desire and sadness and whatnot. And so when you find that Bela and you're at your lowest point, it's almost as if there's no choice at all. You have a choice, but you're such in a state of mind that what choice is there really? And at the end of the day, even though the thing she was doing was evil in her own mind, she just wanted to live in this fantasy world like that a child would want to live in, that a child would want to run away from. And so, like, in her last moments, how she actually sees a real, true-to-life elf, how Jill shows her that Puck is there. And so, like, the Misty Valley at one point really did have elves sort of validating her fantasy. And then, of course, she does try to fly away, and she starts to, I feel like in this scene, she starts to really kind of regret her decision of everything, and that maybe there was another way, but it's too late now, and she begins to crash to the ground. And I don't know, I always felt some sympathy for Rosine here, and I know that some people don't, simply because she is an apostle, and I understand that. But I guess from looking at it from a child's perspective, I don't agree with her, but I can understand how she got herself into that place. And at the time of dying, it's too late, she's made her choice and she has to live with it. And it's, I don't know, it's a sad moment. Now at my number 5 pick, I'm going to go with Ganishka. And Ganishka is an interesting case because his death pretty much changed the entire landscape of the manga itself, where he goes into this man-made Bela in order to try to ascend even further than he had before, and he becomes this giant Cthulhu-like creature whose mind is broken. He doesn't even know who he is anymore. He's just stomping around. And for someone whose whole life was just filled with darkness and paranoia, always worried that there was going to be somebody else to take his place, to take his power, to take him off of his throne and everything, being betrayed and poisoned and all these things. And then in his last moments, he sees Femto, the God Hand, and he sort of becomes at peace in a way. Like, he feels like the darkness melts away, and he can feel this creature of light, this Lord of Light, if you will, sort of taking it away. Just let me rest. Just let me be in peace. And then not only does Ganishka get killed here, well, really thanks to the Skull Knight, but, Femto kind of redirected that there. But his death, actually, him being split open and releasing all of that astral energy, basically kind of changed the entire worldscape of Berserk, like I said, and turned it into a world of Fantasia. And Ganishka's body, where he was standing, sort of turns into this, like, light tree, world tree thing that connects everything, that connects the two worlds together. And I still don't know if this is, like, literally meant to be Ganishka's, carcass has turned into this world tree, or if killing Ganishka has just sort of, like, manifested the world tree. But whatever the case, if not for Ganishka's death, then this wouldn't have happened. So it's extremely important. And of course, the end of Volume 34, where this happens, is one of the most jaw-dropping moments in the entire series. At my number 4 pick, I'm going to go with the Count from the Black Swordsman arc. And the reason why this one is up so high, I think it's because when I started the manga, I had seen the anime first, but when I started the manga, I didn't know anything about the Count character or anything that was going to happen with him. And he is sort of our introduction and explanation of how the lore of apostles even work in the first place. We see his Bela, we see it activated when he doesn't want to die, his desperation and despair and desire, and we see the God Hand show up for the first time. We get the backstory of how he sacrificed his wife, and now he needs to make another sacrifice if he wants to continue living, and it actually has to be somebody that he cares about. And so this is how we know that the sacrifice can't just be anybody. You can't just sacrifice whatever, and this is how we also know that Griffith must have cared about his Band of the Hawk, because you can't sacrifice something that you don't have feelings for. And so the Count, the only thing that he had left with his daughter, and the thing that was so great about it is that he actually decides not to sacrifice her, which again shows that apostles though they are demonic creatures, they are still capable of affection in their own way, because the Count still cared about his daughter, one, enough to sacrifice her, and two, enough to refuse to sacrifice her. So again, that kind of goes hand in hand with the Rosine stuff too. We know that kind of deep down within an apostle, there still is that kind of human core, even though they are something completely different now. But anyways, and then we also get to see what happens to an apostle when they die and they get sucked into this vortex, which was super cool to see, especially when you're first reading Berserk and you have no idea what's going on. You just see all these souls and skeleton things kind of like reach out of this swirling pit and then pull the Count in. I don't know, it's just super badass. It's awesome. It breaks down the lore. It explains what you need to know about apostles and the Godhand and everything. Everything is shown through the character of the Count, and it works so well. My number 3 pick is going to be Pippin. And Pippin's death was really, really sad, again, from the eclipse. But the thing about it is that Pippin went down swinging like a champ. He jumps in the way, he protects Casca, he goes down he's fighting like 5 apostles at once, okay? And let's not forget, Pippin was physically stronger than Guts. He's able to lift Guts up on his shoulder and carrying him around. Like, as strong as Guts is, if they were like deadlifting weights, Pippin's lifted more, alright? He's got a power lifter body. He knows what he's doing, alright? The man can swing around a mace like nobody's business. And this guy was taking on dozens of apostles, and we don't get to actually see his death on screen. Maybe that's for the better. But we do get to cut to Guts looking up and seeing Pippin, and then we see literally his entire insides have been ripped out, which is horrible. Like, that hit me so bad, because Pippin was my boy, dude. Like, he's just a beast. He's just battling to the very bitter end, and then that happens, and then we actually see the Count, oddly enough, is the one that lifts him up and rips him in half, and it's like, oh my god, like, Pippin did not deserve that, man. R.I.P. to Pippin. The number 2 Berserk death is gonna go to Donovan. And this is definitely the catharsis death, because Donovan, do I really need to go into everything that happens with Donovan? I mean, he is one of the core reasons for Guts' trauma and to everything that happened to him when he was a child. And so when Donovan does what he does, he essentially becomes one of the worst and most hated Berserk characters, and also for some reason one of the most memed. But when Guts gets his revenge on Donovan and shoots him in the back and comes up to him and even shoots him point blank right in the face, it is just such a cathartic death. Also, Guts still being a child at this point, kind of showing that he's not going to take any shit. You know, he is going to fight back against this harsh and cruel world, that even if horrible things happen to him, he's going to continue to fight. But it is also sad because he still at that point doesn't believe that Gambino had anything to do with it. But at the very least, seeing Guts get some vengeance against his abuser is very cathartic, and still one of the best deaths in my opinion, because if almost any character besides Griffith deserved to die within Berserk, it's definitely Donovan. Human characters, at least. And the number 1 Berserk death, of course, it's going to be Judo. Judo was the most likable guy of the original Band of the Hawk. Judo was the guy that was always supportive. Judo was the guy helping Guts get incorporated within the band. Judo was the guy that was always supportive of Casca and supportive of Guts and Casca getting together as well. He always kind of had the right advice to say. He always just seemed like this guy that sort of had a deep sadness within him and yet at the same time, he's just gonna sort of live life the way that it comes at him and not try to force it in any kind of way. He spends his last moments defending Casca to the bitter end. He tries to get her out of this crazy dimension that they're in, even though there's no escape. He jumps in front of an apostle in order to take the blows, and so that she doesn't get hit. He throws the knife at the last moment, and even though she tries to take him away, the only things he can think about in his last moments are his feelings for Casca. We're kind of assuming this, but it's also kind of point blank in the pages, so take it as you will. But we assume that Judo had the biggest crush on Casca, but could never find the right words to say, could never be that guy. And he knew that he sort of never had a chance with her anyways. And so even in his last moments, as his vision's fading and he's looking at Casca, he's never been the one to be able to say the things he wished he could say, or maybe say it right, or find the right words. Sort of a feeling behind the eyes that he was never able to verbalize. And even in his last words, he can't say what he wants to. He's commenting on what he's seeing with Casca crying, and yet knowing that he missed his chance, knowing that he never went for it, knowing that he'll never get a chance again. And yeah, we all ship Guts with Casca, for sure. But I think a lot of us can probably relate to that one person that maybe we should have said what we were feeling, but never got the courage to, and now it's way too late. I don't know, there might be something sad in that we all relate to. Maybe that's why we think Judo is the saddest death in Berserk. Anyways, guys, there you have it. There are my top 10 deaths in Berserk as far as getting the most amount of reaction from me while reading the manga. This was a video suggestion by my Patreon supporter, Yusef. Thank you so much, man. If you guys have a video that you want me to do, I do have a tier. You can check out the Patreon link in the description below. There is a final tier there, the Miura Senseis, where I will make a video about whatever topic that you want me to make. In the $1 tier, I'll follow you on whatever social media platform you want me to follow you on. On the $5 tier, you get access to the Patreon-only portion of the Discord server. In the $10 tier, I'll promo something that you want me to promo for you, whether it's your YouTube channel, your music page, your art, or anything like that. And at the $50 tier, it's a video about whatever topic you want me to make. And also that video gets top priority, so I will make it as soon as possible, as soon as the donation is made. But that'll about do it for this video, guys, so thank you very much for watching. I do really appreciate it. Like I said, all my links are in the description below, so go and check those out. And let's just hope that we can all survive until the end of Berserk's publishing. Let's hope. Thank you, as always, for watching this video. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time.